A midlife crisis is more than just a cultural stereotype. It's a real psychological struggle that can surface between the ages of 40 and 60. Often triggered by aging, loss, or unmet expectations, it can actually lead individuals to question their identity, make impulsive choices, or abruptly abandon long term commitments. While not officially classified yet as a mental illness, the emotional and relational fallout is very real, especially for the spouses and families left behind. This podcast gives voice to those living through the aftermath, exposing the hidden pain, and seeking accountability, healing, and understanding. Thank you for joining us today on MLC Bomb Drop and Beyond. The stories and events discussed in this podcast are for informational and entertainment purposes only and should not be considered legal, medical, or professional advice. Any names, locations, or identifying details have been changed to protect privacy. Any similarities to actual persons, living or dead, or real events are purely coincidental. The information presented on this podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be considered as professional advice. Always consult with a qualified expert regarding any decisions related to your specific situation. The views expressed by guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect the opinions of the host or the podcast creators. Welcome back to Midlife Crisis, Bomb Drop and Beyond. Season 2 starts with a story that's as complex as it is heartbreaking. This is the story of a wife who 13 years into marriage was blindsided when her husband announced he was transitioning to become a woman. This is going to be a 2-part premiere because one episode can't capture the full weight of it. In part 1, we're going to hear Ruthie's voice, raw and unfiltered. So before we hear from Ruth today, I'm going to give you guys some stats on this situation. About 1% of people in the U.S. identify as transgender or non-binary. So that's roughly about 3 million people in the U.S. So it's not rare, but it's still, a minority experience and new for many. And for many, the first feelings of gender incongruence trace all the way back to childhood. Yet the decision to socially or medically transition often comes decades later. Midlife can be that moment when old truths can no longer be suppressed. So, is transition itself a midlife crisis? The answer to that is clearly no. Gender identity and midlife crisis are different phenomena. What's true is that midlife is a stage when people do make big identity moves, whether it's divorce, career upheaval, faith shifts, or in some cases, coming out or transitioning. So the timing can overlap, but one doesn't cause the other. But for the left behind spouse, the reality is still gut-wrenching. And you're not just navigating a marital breakdown, but you're navigating now the weight of a transformation you never signed up for. And with that in mind, let's step in today's story and meet Ruth. Hi, Ruthie. Thanks for joining us today.
Hi.
So, do you have a husband that was in midlife crisis?
Yes, though the first point of my story starts with the fact that I'm not sure you could call him husband
Okay.
because there were personality changes before the bomb drop happened. And the first one started when my husband of 13 years came home and told me he was going to become a woman. And there'd never been any hint that he was thinking this way or that he was feeling this way. He had never given me any sign that he had that in his head at all. But one day he came home and he told me he was going to start taking hormones in order to transition into a woman and that I could either deal with it or leave.
Wow.
And this was about a year before bomb drop. And I could even go back a few months before that and say that he had been playing around with some identity problems for months before that, before it culminated into I'm gonna become a woman.
Wow. And do you guys have children?
Yes, we have 3 children, they're all teenagers now. We are both the parents of all 3 children, and they were stair steps at 18 months between them, and they are the best thing that has happened in my life. It was very confusing, and most of all, because it was so aggressive how suddenly I couldn't use the word he or his or call him by the name that he was born with without having him stare at me like I was offending him, like I was calling him a bad word. And I couldn't figure out what to say to him because everything I tried to say offended on some level. And then I started trying to reach out to people in the trans community to, say, Can you tell me what I'm doing wrong?" And I got met with some I don't wanna say they were all negative responses, but there were plenty of people who would call me a transphobe or some other type of prejudice just because I was having a hard time with the fact that this person that I've lived with for 13 years and had children by and have given my whole heart and my whole mind to, has suddenly decided that they are not the person that I've been living with. And they're angry at me. I can't even begin to describe these feelings. But I said, we've been through hard things before. We can get through this together. Just teach me what it is I need to do.
Mhm.
And it
How
was
how old is your husband?
41. And this started the end of 2022. So this started when he was still upper 30s.
Wow. And did you have any when you look back, over the last 13, 15 years, were there any signs or was there any behavior that you thought, maybe that was a sign that something wasn't right?
Eh, eh, This is going to be a little embarrassing to talk about, but we had intimacy issues. And he would tell me that I had a high drive. And so I was just seeing him as having no drive in comparison to my high drive, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
But he would go days and weeks without kissing me or even acknowledging that I entered the same room he was in. If I tried to talk to him, he would often be uninterested if he even acknowledged I was trying to talk to him.
Hmm.
But, where it really hurt was the fact that I kept asking him what he needed in order to want to have sex with me. And he kept telling me that there's nothing wrong, that I wasn't doing anything, and he just wasn't in the mood, or sometimes he'd pick a fight just so he didn't have to deal with me for a while.
Mhm.
And,
Wow.
now knowing that she eventually went on to have relationships with trans male and trans female, the fact that my husband avoided anal sex is telling to me. I
Wait,
know he would.
I'm confused. What do you I don't know. What do you mean?
When I was married,
Mhm.
my husband would not speak about my butt, let alone have any involvement with it during sex.
Okay, so He only, he was more into vaginal sex, not anal sex. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
But I now, in the current day, he is having, I can't think of a polite way to put it, man on man contact, though they're both trans.
So, when you say man on man contact and they're both trans, that's two men that are in the process of becoming women. Is
Yes.
that correct? Okay. How do you know this though?
We're kind of skipping past bomb drop, but
Okay.
the first
We can
Mother's Day after they left the state, um, they brought a girlfriend with them to visit the children on Mother's Day, and this was a trans male. Wait, I think I got that backwards. It's trans into what they're becoming, so trans female.
Oh, a man becoming female. Okay.
Yes.
And this is so interesting to me because I'm thinking, these are two men both
Both
becoming
pretending to
females.
be women so they can be lesbians.
Yeah, and, are they gonna have, uh
It there's transition, full transition, and partial transition is just hormones. So it depends on
okay.
whether they're willing to have surgery.
Huh.
Mine, all the way up until the time that she left the state, was not interested in that, but conversations after that were leaning more into this area of, I might have surgery.
Huh.
But I will say that because of hormones and some personal choices, they're not functional with the male equipment.
Oh, I see, okay. Huh. That's very interesting then if they're gonna be women,
Yeah.
if they're not gonna have a male equipment product, you know?
They have to have sex as women.
Huh. Wow. This is a whole new, obviously a whole new ballgame for
Yeah.
you. So, okay, we'll roll backwards then to I guess leading up to bomb drop. So he about I guess he told you sort of a year before bomb drop that
Yeah.
he wanted to become a woman, and like when your husband tells you that, what are you think? I mean, I'm thinking, okay, then what does that mean for us?
Yes.
Like, um, you know,
I mean, I'd
what
already
did he
had this
what did he
we
think
were
that was going to mean for you guys?
I'd always had this fear that he was going to leave me someday, and then he kind of approached me in that aggressive way, and later on, he turned around and came at me with this almost heartfelt plea, and so I was thrown between these 2 extremes, and the only thing I know is that I love this person and I want them to be happy. And they're
Yeah,
telling
right.
me that the only way that they are going to be happy is if they take these hormones and live to be the person they always wanted to be. The one problem is they never said that in the 13 years leading up to this. So what else haven't they told me?
Right.
And yeah, that was a lot. Eventually I found out there was a lot that was not told to me. But at the time I said, okay, I probably will make some mistakes, but I'm here for you because I love you and I want you to be happy and we will figure it out as we go.
Um, and, did the were the kids aware of this at the time?
Uh, I think they actually started talking to our daughter first because right around puberty, the daughter told me I might be non-binary, which is neither male or female, somewhat androgynous. I'm probably
Huh.
mixing my terms. But, and I told my middle child, the daughter, that, I would support any mental changes that they wanted to make until they were 18. I said they could make any physical changes they wanted when they hit 18, but until that point, their body is still developing and still needs time to grow before they mess with permanent changes. And, I never understood where that conversation came from, but I did my best, and I'm realizing even as I say it, I my spouse was not present for this conversation, and I'm not sure my spouse ever offered an opinion. But, that was when around, what, 11, 12, and my non-binary middle child is, 15 now. So I guess it was right around the same time that, the "I'm a woman" conversation happened with the other kids.
Mhm. That's a lot for them to deal with at that age. It's hard enough being an adolescent, um, and going through the changes yourself and to
Yeah.
realize, wow, that one of your parents is going through that. But, it's not uncommon, and, um, hopefully they have a lot of support. Um, so
Yeah,
did your
to
husband stay in the home, leading all the way for the next year?
we were still married. She referred to herself as my wife, even though me and the new woman never officially got married. After the hormones settled, and I say settled, they kept messing around with the mix, and the physical changes that could be made through hormonal changes had taken place. I was still living as a spouse with this person. I mean, they were
Mhm.
working the opposite shift. I was day shift and they were night shift. So there was only some crossover on weekends. And maybe that is the reason that I did not realize that this time spent transitioning and before bomb drop was mostly spent coming up with a way of leaving me. I am pretty sure I don't know how long she spent looking at me and thinking of me as a spouse before she decided that they were gonna leave the state and the whole family behind. But I do know what she did has got to be one of the most cruel things I've even heard about in my life, let alone have experienced.
Yeah, it is. It really is. The discard. Did you I don't know if you got we haven't gotten even to bomb drop yet, but I don't know
Yeah.
if you felt you had experienced
Was
extreme
it there was
discard
a
or no contact.
devaluation period. But every sentence was about my flaw, and some of these things, like, I do not like anime. It is a personal preference, but my ex saw this as my biggest character flaw,
Mm.
and he would talk about it in this dismissive tone to my face. "What should I expect? You don't even like anime." And there was a couple of really heartbreaking pieces of information imparted to me about my own past during this devaluation period, in which my spouse admitted to me that with only a year or two of having gotten married, he left me standing in my state of birth, having been publicly humiliated and rejected, with my kids piled into the back of his dad's car, and the overall feeling that I was a failure as a mother. He gave me a wad of cash and said, "Bye," and left me standing there. And he admitted to me during this period that when he left, he was not sure he would ever see me again, and he didn't care.
And wait, when did this happen?
Within 2 or 3 years of us getting married,
And you
the
already had
children were
kids?
babies.
Oh, okay. They were so this happened, yeah, like 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Huh. How did you guys after he threw that wad of cash at you, the infants were in the car, how'd you guys get back together?
I mean, he didn't tell me that he didn't want me to come. He just left me standing there knowing that I didn't really have much to live for anymore, and
Huh.
eventually admitted to me that he thought I was gonna commit suicide, and he left me to it. And so I went home because I had no place else to go, and that was the only way I was gonna ever see my babies. And they put me through a lot after that, and eventually I was just so lonely that I gave up trying to get an apology for it.
The next 10 years, were the how were the next 10 years? Has it been a pretty rough ride almost for the majority of your relationship?
Would you believe that the major event that struck all of this off was that when I was 25, I had a blood clot that nearly killed me. And I had just had my middle child, the non-binary. I just had she was a month old when this blood clot nearly killed me, and the thing that saved my life was a employee-sponsored trip to a amusement park that my husband's work was giving, and I really wanted to take my babies on some amusement rides, but I couldn't move my leg. So I went to a walk-in clinic hoping they'd give me a shot, and they find out that I have a blood clot, and when I got to the hospital, I remember the nurse telling me, "Most people in your condition don't make it to the hospital."
Oh.
And I spent 2 days in the hospital alone thinking that I was going to die because the medicine was not working on me. And during this time, his parents didn't care. They were complaining about having to care for my babies.
Oh.
And my family didn't have the means or availability, if you believe that anybody doesn't have the means or ability to come see their family member in their deathbed. So I spent an entire week recovering from a near fatal accident of her disease, I guess, alone. My husband continued to work, my babies were with the in-laws, and my family couldn't be bothered.
And you were in the hospital all alone?
Yes.
Wow, Ruthie, I'm so sorry. That's horrible. That's trauma right there, you know?
Yes.
Not to mention you were dealing with postpartum and all that too.
I hadn't
And that's
thought of that.
scary. 25 years old to have a blood clot? That
Yes.
I mean, that's really scary, you know?
When I came home, I kept asking, for some reassurance that, you know, this person that I had given children to could s not see living without me,
Mhm.
and he couldn't give it. In fact, he got more and more angry with me the more I spoke about it. And so I sank into a depression, which led to me getting reported to the children's services because I was speaking too slowly, if you can understand that as a complaint for a bad mother, which led me to the state of my birth where my family tried to take my kids away. And it was that rejection that led to him throwing that wad of money at me and saying bye. And then I came home and got a similar treatment from his parents a year later, where they tried to take the kids. So, I mean, I finally reached this point where there is no grandparents. It's just me, my husband, and my kids. And for a while, it seemed like we were a good family. And then 10 years down the road, he starts telling me these really mean things, things that he's never hinted at before, let alone said he was going to feel. And it's all stuff that I should be saying. Stuff about not being heard, about not getting needs met. And he's throwing them at me like it's my fault.
And how did you react?
I remember it was early November. I was getting ready for an event of that time, and I sat him down and I said, "I think you have decided that I'm going to leave you, and so you are trying to get me to leave first." And he sat there for a minute and he said, "You might be right." And I had this inward cheer go up, thinking, "Oh my God, he understands. Maybe we can have, more communication and a better relationship now." And it was only a month and a half after that that he dropped the bomb. And you will not believe the craziness that is this bomb drop. It was 2 days after our 13th anniversary, which is also 2 days after Christmas. So, we had our anniversary on the 27th, and he dropped the bomb on the 29th by picking me up for a date. Can you even believe this? He picked me up for a date in his car, got 3 miles down the road, and says, "I have something to tell you that you're not going to like."
So I just wanna back up a little because you guys had just celebrated Christmas, everything was cool and
Yeah.
fun, I assume, and then he's like, "Hey, hon, let's go we're gonna go out," and you're sort of excited, it's like, "Ooh, a little date with my husband,"
Yeah.
and right? And so you get, you know, get dressed and, look cute and all that kinda stuff, and you're looking forward to having a date with your husband, and, um, and then he says to you, "Hey, I've gotta tell you something that you're not gonna like."
Mhm.
Wow. Did your stomach just, like, fall to the floor?
Well, I mean, after "I wanna be a woman," what could be worse? What
That's
more
right,
could
huh?
he it just I mean, we'd weathered all the announcements up to this point. I said, "I won't know until you tell me."
Hey, let me ask you, on that date, so when you got was he how was he dressed for this date? Was he dressed more like a
He
woman?
just he came from work,
Ah, okay.
so probably just in regular work clothes were blue jeans. But yes, she did dress like a woman. I had bought many, skirts and blouses for her, and
Uh-huh.
she shopped alone. We had similar tastes in clothes, actually. But, I do not think there was any changing of clothes. She just looked like she always did, having come home from work.
Okay. And in the female mode, state of mind, okay,
Yes.
and says to you, "Hey, Ruth, I've gotta tell you something that you're not gonna like,"
Yeah.
as as she's driving.
She's driving and I'm in the passenger seat. So, yeah, I guess there was a little bit of fear and a little bit of, "Now what?" And then she says, "I don't wanna be your wife anymore." And I just sort of paused because I'm thinking there's gonna be another role or there's gonna be some change in the relationship rules, maybe there's a open relationship policy coming up, I don't know. But
Mhm,
it took several minutes for it to sink in that she's saying marriage is over,
mm.
and I'm waiting for an explanation. And I think I remember saying, "You don't just fire somebody without ever telling them what they're doing wrong." And, this whole time, she's continuing to drive to the date, which is actually a home improvement store, but that was a theme for a relationship. But after I finally figured out that what this person is telling me is that our relationship is over, and I'm crying and shaking and rocking and basically trying not to fall apart, and she still wants to go on the date.
Let me ask you, a lot of times when, somebody's in MLC, they're almost jubilant when they, make that announcement, they're excited now because they can see the beginning of the new road they're gonna be on. Do you feel like, in retrospect, in hindsight, that she was jubilant, or sort of semi-excited
Yeah, I could see that.
more than sad?
Well, there was no sad. There was a
There was
little
no
bit
sad,
of
yeah.
disgust, like, my reaction was so unwarranted, and, I have to admit the rest of the car ride was a bit of a blur.
Mhm.
I, think she said something about moving out of the bedroom. I just know I came home and I went into the room that we had a roommate at the time. It had been my room, but I gave it up so the roommate could have it, and I went in there and I said, "Can I sit on your bed?" And this trans male, they, let me sit and rock for a while, and while I was doing that, she was moving stuff out of our master bedroom and moving my youngest son out of his room so that she could take that room. So I will clearly state that they put my youngest son on the couch.
Wow. And how long did this, situation go on before she moved out?
This happened December 29th of 2022. She moved out in August of 2023.
Wow, so your son had lost his room for, like, 9 months?
He's he hasn't really gotten it back yet because I've gotta clean it out in order for him to get in there.
Oh my god, the poor kid. How's he doing?
He he actually likes the couch. He says it's more comfortable than a bed.
Well, that's
But
good.
there was a
He sent
time
that
where
message.
I moved a mattress in there on a loft.
And you mentioned you guys had a roommate, the trans male. Was that
Yeah.
person seeing your ex? The
There
trans the trans male was becoming female, is that correct?
no, female becoming male.
Oh, the trans male was a woman becoming male. Okay, got it.
Yes. And I'll refer to this person as they. I
Okay.
get very confused by pronouns.
That's
They
okay.
tried to be comforting to me. They'd even had a similar situation that they had been in before. But at the same time, since my ex was trans and this person was trans, there was this solidarity that I could not break through. So
Yeah.
even though
Yeah.
this person is hurting you, yeah, they deserve to hurt you.
When your husband well, okay, so, your ex moved out in August of 2023. The
Yes.
roommate, are they still in your home?
They moved out around the same time, and that was something that had been agreed upon when we went through the divorce.
Mm,
And the divorce had to happen before this person left the state, because once they left the state, it would be very difficult to have the lawyers in place to make the divorce agreement happen.
okay. So now you are divorced and they have moved out of state,
Yes.
and okay. Um, do you guys have contact? And what about the kids?
I am heartbroken for my kids, but there's not much I can say to them without bad mouthing the other parent. And not only is that a personal philosophy, it's also part of the divorce agreement.
Mhm,
I have full custody. She still has like 50% custody, but while the children are with the parents, that parent has the overriding custody, the overriding rights.
mhm.
So all three children live with me, so I have full care of them. And honestly, I don't think my ex is really that bothered. I don't know if that says anything about his opinion of me as a parent, but it has been nice learning that I am capable of being a parent, even though I did fall apart and have some really blurry days for a while. And the day that I found the support group because of the key phrase, "I love you, but I'm not in love with you,"
Mhm.
that really changed my life.
Yep.
Because the first thing that was driving me insane was the confusion. Because this person is still saying, "I love you." And then they gave me the speech of, "I love you, but I'm not in love with you." And then they offered therapy. "Hey, maybe our marriage could be fine." And then they told me I don't see a point in going to therapy. And there was a whole lot of back and forth. I mean, the day after the "I don't wanna be your wife anymore" conversation or announcement, she sends me a text message that started with, "Hey girl, sorry for the way things turned out. You just erased my future. That's how things turned out."
Thanks, you guys, for listening to our story today with Ruth. That is just part one. This is such a hard story for her to tell. It's heartbreaking on so many levels. And, I'm this is the first time I've had somebody on where the situation is a gender transition combined with midlife crisis. And so I wanted to do a little research to share with everybody. And one that came to mind recently was Caitlyn Jenner when she publicly came out as transgender in April of 2015. At that time, Caitlyn Jenner, well, Bruce Jenner, now Caitlyn Jenner, she was 65 years old at the time. She changed her name and gender back then when she was 65, and then she had gender affirming surgery in 2017 at the age of 67. Um, and I looked into the surgery because we touched upon that early in Ruth's interview. So I'll just share with you guys some information here so you can have an idea if you're not already familiar with it. Okay, so what happens in gender affirming surgery? Um, well, let's take a moment to talk about what people often wonder, but few explain in plain language. And that's what I'll do for you guys today. what actually happens in gender affirming surgery. So, for someone transitioning from male to female, the most common procedure is vaginoplasty. In this surgery, the existing tissue is carefully reshaped to create female anatomy. So the skin is inverted to form a vaginal canal. The testicles are removed, and part of the tissue is used to build labia. Surgeons can even preserve nerves to fashion a clitoris capable of sensation. After surgery, there's a recovery period in the hospital, followed by regular care at home to keep the new anatomy healthy. It is not a quick process. Healing can actually take several months, but they say satisfaction rates are high. Um, Regret rates are very low, hovering around 1%. So most people report feeling more at peace in their own skin. Caitlyn Jenner herself has spoken openly about having this surgery, vaginoplasty, back in 2017 at the age of 67. And she described it as the step that finally made her feel whole. And it's important to say surgery is just one option. Not every trans woman chooses it. Some stop at hormones or social transition, which it sounds like maybe Ruth's husband is, or now she, is going to stop at hormones or social transition. But for those who do this, the surgery, the whole goal is alignment. And that is like bringing their body closer to the identity that they've carried inside themselves for years, often since childhood. So now let's talk about the other side. What surgery looks like for someone transitioning from female to male. The most common step is what's called top surgery. That means removing breast tissue and reshaping the chest to appear more traditionally male. For many trans men, this is the single most important procedure because it allows them to live day to day without the constant reminder of gender dysphoria. Some choose additional procedures like a hysterectomy, removing the uterus, or removing the ovaries, often for both gender and health reasons. Then there's what people call bottom surgery, which actually comes in two forms. One option is called metoidioplasty, where I hope I said that correctly. This is where testosterone enlarges the clitoris and surgeons use that tissue to then create a small but functional penis. It preserves natural sensation and in many cases allows urination while standing, but the result is often it's more modest in size. The other option is a phalloplasty. Again, I hope I pronounced that correctly. A more complex surgery where skin grafts, often from arm or thigh, are used to construct a larger penis. Later, implants can even allow rigidity, but this path usually requires multiple surgeries and it has higher risk of complications. There's also another procedure called a scrotoplasty, creating a scrotum, sometimes with implants. But not every trans man pursues surgery. And not every man who does wants every option. Satisfaction rates, especially for top surgery, are very high, and regret rates are very low. And just like for trans women, the goal isn't about perfection. It's often just about that feeling of alignment. It's about feeling that your body finally reflects who you've always known yourself to be and who you want to be. So they really do have a lot of choices out there. And, there's a lot of choices out there. And this is for many, many people, just one more way of helping them feel whole. And in this case with Ruth's husband, everything collided all at one time. So thank you for joining us today on our season 2 premiere of MLC Bomb Drop and Beyond. Our part 2 will be out shortly, and where you'll hear what happens next in the situation with Ruth and her family as they navigate a new day. Thanks again for joining us, you guys. You guys, forward moving spouses, you are not alone. Left behind spouses, you are not alone. Those in crisis, you are certainly not alone. This is just crazy how epidemic this has become. I have a waiting list now of people from around the world that I'm trying to get to. And if you've been through a midlife crisis or been impacted by someone else's and you want to share your story, I'd love to hear from you. Hang in there, you guys. I will get to all of you. Please reach out to me at mlcbombdrop@gmail.com and visit us on Facebook and Instagram, MLC Bombdrop. And just remember, your voice matters. Your story could be the one that helps someone else feel seen. It could help someone else feel heard. And it will help somebody else feel understood. You are not alone, no matter where you are in your journey. If the bomb was just dropped, the earthquake just happened, if you are 7 or 8 years in and you're coming out of starting to wake up and awaken to this, um, you are not alone. It's sad that this is epidemic, but we're here to provide support. So until next time, take care and live authentically each and every day. Thanks again, you guys.